that no matter what you want to do and no matter what you want to be, he was a feminist before it was, there
Popular.
was feminist, I think. And but he said, and whatever you want to be, you can be that. And that gave me a lot of confidence, to go and do what I wanted to do. And he always used to say as well, because he was such a humble man, that always never think you're better than anybody else, but never ever forget you're just as good.
That's great. Hello, and welcome back to all my Courage, Confidence, and Connections podcast fans. Have another awesome guest for you. Well, aren't they all? But this lady is very special to me, and this is Marie Bailey. We'll get to know her today and what she does. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Well, I know you haven't done many of these, but mine are easy, and we just have fun.
Awesome. Perfect. I'm a novice.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. I was a novice when I started this, so we'll just go with it. And with Marie is her field of expertise is grief. And that may sound funny, but she's had enough grief in her life to definitely prepare her for this. So, Marie, I always like my guests to get a backstory or some history. And so, where did you grow up?
Okay. I'm from Canada, and I grew up on the east coast of Canada in Newfoundland. It's the furthest eastern province. It's actually on an island. I grew up on an island in the Atlantic Ocean and in a little fishing village. So, beautiful, beautiful area that I came from, and it was a beautiful place to grow up. It's still home, no matter where I go, it's still home.
A fishing village.
A
So,
little fishing village.
were your
Yes.
parents in the fishing business?
My dad. Yes, my dad was a fisherman. He was the number one lobster when I was a kid growing up. So lobster was his thing. So yeah, yeah, it was pretty neat. Now when I see people are all, lobster is such a big thing, et cetera, it's like, nah,
Yeah.
eh.
Yeah.
That was
Oh,
Tuesdays. Yeah,
I know, really. I do love lobster, so I'm going to
I
interject
do.
a funny story. My now deceased stepdad and my mom, they lived on the North Carolina coast, and he did what do you call it? Soft shell crab. That
Right.
that was his thing. And so we got to eat it like nobody's business. And what was really funny is one night at dinner, my mom had this huge platter of soft shell crab that she had fried. And and so my stepdad looked at us and said, I hope you guys appreciate that. Because when we had three or four on our plate, he goes, that's about $200 worth in New York.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
it's
That's true.
crazy, crazy,
It's
crazy
crazy.
business. Yeah, the fishing business, and I didn't learn a whole lot. I've never liked to fish. I got taken out one time as a kid, and I'm like, this ain't for me. I'm not gonna, I don't put worms on hooks. I don't pull fish off hooks. No, no, none of that. The thing about lobsters, well, they'll bite the mess out of you. So you got to do that right, right? Did you go out with your dad?
Oh yes. Oh
Oh,
yes. My job used to be when the lobsters were coming out of the pots, and I mean back then my dad pulled every pot by hand. There was no such thing as, and so it's incredibly hard work. But my job was when the lobsters came out of the pot, I there was a little wooden thing that you put to keep the claws apart from each other. So that was my job, to put the little wooden thing in the claw to keep them from biting. That was my
did
job.
they try to bite you, or did you
Oh
get bit?
yes. Oh yes. They'll go after you with the claws and stuff. So that was my job, or putting a little piece of elastic around them so they couldn't come apart. But oh yeah, I was my dad's shadow, so wherever he was, I was. But every time something about people that eat lobster and out of where I come from, the first time I ever saw people put butter on lobster or dip it in butter, it's like, what? That's
Yeah.
sacrilegious. Like, I mean, it just doesn't. It's just like, what? No.
Oh man, gotta have butter with the lobster. I mean, uh,
Right.
so I'm guilty. I'm one of those.
You one of those? Oh God. Hmm.
I know, but it's so good. But I can't. I I couldn't have them and cook them. I couldn't stand the screaming. I hear they
I
scream when you put them in the pot. Yeah.
never heard that, to be honest. I think that might be a tale, but
Oh, really?
but I
Okay.
Yeah, I've never heard them doing that, but I have to admit I even put butter on mine now, which I hope nobody from where I come from sees this. Just saying. Yep.
Hey, I'm a Southern girl, butter on everything I can.
Butter. That's true. What
Absolutely.
would life be without butter?
I know. I grew up with my one of my grandmothers may actually my great aunt may have too skimmed the cream and churned it and then poured it
Wow.
into the molds. So if you know you can't that homemade butter is just
Oh,
okay.
oh,
So
yeah.
this is not about me, but I have to get in a funny story about butter. So you know how much, since we're talking about butter, how much I love butter. I even wrote a blog on this. So I think I was about maybe 4 years old. I don't know, three, four, five at the most. And you know how you get the wax wrapped butter. We don't get that anymore. They do it differently. But so one day my mom was out of the kitchen. I went in the kitchen. I grabbed a stick of butter. I unwrapped it. I climbed up on the counter first with a stool. So, and then I unwrapped it. And after that, you would have thought I had a popsicle.
You do like your butter.
Yeah, but I started real young. My mom caught me though.
Do you have any scars to prove it?
No. Mm-mm.
No, I have this one. I climbed up on the chair to get something that my mom told me not to get. And of course, whatever it was, and I had to cut it out with a knife. And so every time I look down at my thumb, I have a scar where I cut my from her. And every time I look down, she's saying, told you not to touch it. So we all,
Yeah, I've got scars from other silly things, but not, yeah,
from
no,
not from the butter,
not from the butter. No,
not
no,
from the
no,
butter.
no problem. Yeah, I've been made fun of many times. I'm like, look, I'm sorry. It's I'm from the South. You got grits, you got biscuits, you got to have butter on everything, just about. So,
You got it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Totally agree.
yep. Okay, so we won't talk about why how Marie puts butter on her lobsters anymore. So,
No.
she didn't grow up eating butter with lobster. Now, after that silly story, and we digressed severely. And so you helped your dad on a lobster boat. Did you have any particularly fun experiences or anything? Now, you know we're courage, competence, connections. So were there any courageous moments you can look back that involved your childhood, maybe on the boat? Now, I would say it's courageous to grab a lobster and put a thing on him. I mean, on his claws, but
There you go. I deserve a medal. Um, I think my dad, when I was growing up, my dad was like I said, worked so hard as a fisherman. It's not an easy life, and but he used to always tell me, which I've never ever forgotten, that you know you can be anything you want to be. If you want it bad enough, doesn't matter what it is. If you want to be, and then back then, girls weren't being fishermen.
oh,
Girls were that was the man was the fisherman. You didn't see a lot of women in the fishery. I mean, you do more now, but he always just said, that no matter what you want to do and no matter what you want to be, he was a feminist before it was there
popular.
was feminist, I think. And but he said, and whatever you want to be, you can be that, and that gave me a lot of confidence, to go and do what I wanted to do. And he always used to say as well, because he was such a humble man, that always never think you're better than anybody else, but never ever forget you're just as good.
That's great.
Right. And so for
Yeah.
me, that's always in the back of my head.
Yeah, I really like that. And it would be ideal if every parent had that opportunity to tell their kids that because I didn't hear that growing up.
Yeah.
But I did get my independence from my dad because he ignored me and I had to.
Yeah. Well, that works too.
Yeah, that worked too. And
Too.
as you were growing up and you got into your teenage years and then what did you do as far as schooling and working in the early years?
Well, I went right from school to school. So I first started out as a social worker, and then I went into counseling. I mean, counseling as a social worker as well, but then I went into counseling. So most of my life has been in those fields, in the helping fields.
Okay.
So yeah, so my most of my career has been caught up in that work, even up to that's what I do now, but all the way along, I was always being prepared for, whatever happens to us in our lives prepares us for when we get to what we're supposed, when we grow up, when we get to what we're supposed to be,
Right.
right? So yeah, so I think everything added up. So yeah, I've always been in the helping profession, always been in the like social services type areas, counseling and stuff. Yeah.
Well, that definitely prepared you for what you're doing now. But I want to talk about your story that really propelled you into this field and gave you experiences I'm sure you never want to relive. And I want our audience to know that where you're coming from is with profound experience and and you've experienced enough grief for several people. Can we talk about that? I want you to be comfortable.
Sure.
And
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
your story is vital to let our audience know that you can get past grief. And so, audience, she's helped me because of extensive grief that I've been through. And I will tell you that she's been there, done that. And how many t-shirts do you own? So, a lot. Let's talk about your experiences that you're comfortable with talking about because you've lost a lot in your life.
Yeah, it always used to be, it's funny because it's only in the last few years that I really talk about my experiences that much. But I mean, it started when I was only 5 years old. I say that I talk the talk, but I've walked the walk. So I know what people are where they're coming from. But when I was 5 years old was the first time, and I lost my sister. My baby sister died when I was five, and I saw my dad and my mom go through such, I mean, at five, I wasn't young enough or old enough to understand really what was going on, but I knew what sadness looked like and what despair looked like. And to see that devastation. And then I made up my mind. I say this, I've written a book about this. I made up my mind when I was 5 years old that I was going to do whatever I could to make sure nobody was sad again. So that was my big plan when I was five. Between God and I made a plan that that's what I was going to do. Little did I know at the time just how far afield that would go. But then I lost two other sisters. Before I was even 10, I'd lost three sisters, and every time just the devastation that, I saw my parents go through. And every time it solidified for me again that, I was going to make sure that because it was the first time when I was five I'd ever seen my dad cry. My
Oh,
dad was a big, strong, man that could take care of anything. He could cure the world in my eyes. And it was the first time I'd ever seen him cry.
oh,
And then after that I became his absolute shadow. I became his shadow wherever he was. I
mm,
was. And as I was growing, as a kid up until about 10 or 11 and even beyond that, um, where the graves were at this cemetery on this little island, and my dad took such pain, care of those graves, and I was always with them all the time with that. And then we had a few. Then I lost grandparents very young, very dramatically, and then but nothing prepared me for when I was 18 and just getting ready to take on the world. Even though in my family from day one, I think we were always waiting for the next shoe to fall, because when you've been through loss, you're always waiting. And when I was 18 and just like I said, just ready to, my mom was killed in an accident.
mm,
And it was, it took the wind. I wasn't, even though we'd been through so much, I wasn't prepared for it. It took the wind out of my sails completely. And my dad and my mom were true soulmates, and the devastation that he went through once again was incredible, right? And then so once again, I always used to say that I feel like I spent most of my life from the time I was 5 years old on looking indoors in my house where people were devastated, where people were, and so this little 5-year old that lives inside me all the time is always wanting to take away sadness, take away sadness. That was my, that was my big plan. So and then a few years, later on, I more loss in between, but then a few years later on, and my dad, who was my rock, he died very unexpectedly and was, taken away. And so it was just a steady stream. I mean, I could, I think at one time we had to, I was in a course we were doing about grief, and we were supposed to make a list of all of the people that we had lost in our lives. And I was even shocked when I wrote it down to see just how much, there was. But with my dad too, I think at that point, it was the first time I felt like an orphan, like I was so
Mm,
alone, even though, I mean, had lots of people around me and stuff. That was the first time I felt like this was it. This was the last of it. Like there can't be anything else. I've lost my dad now. Like everything is gone. That's what it felt like. And been through lots of grief, to get me. But over the years, I've learned that, grief is a journey. Grief is a journey. And I spent a lot of years where I wouldn't even tell anyone that my mom had died, because I felt like somehow, what did it mean about me if I didn't have a mom? Somehow, what did it say about me? So when my friends were talking about, spending time with their mom and stuff, I
mm,
never would talk about it, because I didn't want it felt like I had done something for her to leave, and it must mean something in our family, that, we must be living off some big curse, or we must be living off something for all of these things to go wrong, right? And then, I mean, even eventually, I mean, long story short, I've come to terms with that. Losses, we're not broken as grievers, right? We're not broken, we're just grieving, and
mm.
we don't need to be fixed. We don't need anybody to fix us. We just need to, I always say, you can't heal what you can't feel. So
Yeah.
you have to feel your feelings in order to be able to heal them. And but grief is, but I look at it that I still have a mom, I still have a dad, I still have sisters, I still have grandparents. They're not physically with me, but I still have them. And so, yeah, so it's been a long journey, and you know even recently, but nobody ever promised us that it was going to be a easy ride.
No, and grief is one of the hardest. It truly is. And the last grief I experienced was so strong that I thought I was gonna die. And the pain can be, I want our audience to know that you can get through it and don't rush it. Do
Yeah,
not try to rush
absolutely.
through it. Write about it, talk about it if you can. Um, just spend time. And it took me a long time before I could start looking at pictures
Mm.
again without losing it. And I've lost it on many calls. Thankfully, I haven't lost it on my podcast, but I came close. And, but, and audience, pets count, not just
Oh, good.
pet.
Loss is loss and grief is grief, right?
Exactly.
That's what
Exactly.
I tell people all the time. Loss is loss and grief is grief, and your pain is your pain. And in society, what we sometimes do is we like to, it's like a pecking order. Your grandfather died, but he was older. My sister died, she was younger. But there's not a pecking order. Your grief is your grief. And because I've had maybe more than some people, it doesn't make mine any more important than yours, and it doesn't make my pain any more than yours. It doesn't. So never allow anyone to tell you that, your loss is not as significant as somebody else's, because it certainly is. And plus, never allow somebody to tell you that there's a timeline on grief, that you're supposed to be at a certain stage. And like Kubler-Ross, I mean, she was a psychiatrist that did all of the work on the stages of grief. And some people think those are supposed to be, this week we're supposed to be stage one, stage two, stage three, till we never think that you're supposed to be at a certain place at a certain time ever, because everybody's grief is different.
Right.
Everybody's grief is different.
I was just thinking today, about acceptance, and that's there. All the stages are hard,
Yeah.
but the acceptance, it's like my last loss is like I haven't accepted it yet. I really haven't.
Yeah.
It's it's real. I understand up here, but down
Yeah.
here, I'm like, no, it just can't be real. It doesn't feel real to me, and and that's normal. I mean, that is
Very.
whatever you feel is like Marie said, it's what you feel. And people will try to say, well, you should be over it by now, or you should be. Don't go there. Do not. Just don't. And there are groups you can get into. There are people like Marie, and Marie is a specialist. You've had just way too much experience with it. But that's put you in a position of assisting others and helping them understand just how to walk through it in their own way. And the seven stages, right? Seven.
Yes, and but
But
the sixth, oh, sorry.
is that real? I mean, do you have you done enough research? Is that just the absolute, or how does that
You
play
know,
out?
you know what, for me, having been through, I mean, they say, oh, should be here, should be here, should be here. A year down the road, you may get angry. You may not be
Oh,
angry today. You may be angry a year down the road. You may not. A lot of people, they don't even internalize it till a year down the road.
yeah,
But it's society puts this on us that we're supposed to be at a certain point, at a certain. It's if it's been, I've heard people say, oh my God, like her husband's been gone for 3 months. I mean, really? Like, come on. And it's like, until you have felt that hurt,
hmm,
and your hurt is your hurt, until you have felt that hurt, nobody else has been through your pain. Nobody else has been through your hurt. So don't ever allow anybody, never, to tell you where you're supposed to be at a certain point.
yeah,
Never, because it is an individual journey. We all grieve, and it is a journey. There is no destination to grief. I mean, it changes over time when we start to heal when we can remember our loved ones with more love than pain. That's when we know we've started to heal. But 10 years down the road, I've been there. I was on from a group that we both belong to, and I was on my first interview ever, and it's out there somewhere on YouTube. I bawled the whole time, and I was like, oh my God, like how many, right? So don't ever allow, and don't ever be apologize for your tears.
yeah,
Never. Tears are healing. Tears are just love with no place to go,
yeah.
right? And tears are healing. And I always say, if you've got 1,000 tears to shed, don't stop at 500.
I know. And another thing that we need to realize that I didn't appreciate until the last few years after losing my mother and older brother and my beloved pet, Kitty, is the anniversary dates. I didn't
Oh,
understand why a friend of mine, every time an anniversary or a birthday or this, I'm like, why is that such a big deal? And then all of a sudden, yeah, it hits me like a ton of bricks. It's
yeah,
true. It's
yeah,
so true. If
yeah,
you remember them on their birthday, my brother's that's passed, his birthday was just a couple weeks ago or a week ago. And
yeah.
and it wasn't an easy day. I went, oh my goodness. He's been gone almost 2 years, but you remember dates and let yourself, if you need to take the day off, if you need to,
Absolutely.
I mean, do what you need to do, but those anniversary dates kick your butt. I can tell you.
Well, they're very, I mean, my mom's been gone over 30 years, and the 6th of July, I'll never forget the 6th of July. Every year, siblings, we all talk on the 6th of July. And it doesn't matter. And I even, and I mean, I preach this all the time, and I still tell people that, on when the 6th of July is coming up, I always have this thing. It's like, please, please don't let anything happen on the 6th of July. The 7th's okay, but not the 6th. And it's so true. Like we get so caught up in it. And it's a dread that's inside of us. It doesn't matter how much work we do. I still feel like, in my family that, yeah, the another shoe, my sister's husband got cancer, and she called me and said the other shoe fell. the other shoe fell. There's always, right, when, and that dread is, and it's normal, it's perfectly normal to feel those feelings on an anniversary.
True.
Perfectly.
So in your work with people and your own life, because you've lost, well, if you've lost four sisters, right? Okay.
Yes.
You've got a big family, don't
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did.
And so, and I don't, obviously, I don't know the circumstances around any of them. You said your mother was a tragic accident. So my question is, because people lose some, I've experienced both. My mother died at almost 92. That was expected. She was ready. I got to talk to her. She was ready. But my older brother, it was a fatal accident and it was sudden.
Mm.
And I'll never forget that phone call from my nephew. I just, I still can't fully process that. And so when people lose someone who's expected to pass because they've been sick and they know they're going, like my mom or maybe a family member of yours, or sudden, is there is there a difference? Did you experience a different level of, okay, it's all the same. Okay.
Not at all. Grief is grief and loss is loss, and it doesn't matter. And we are never, ever fully prepared. I've lost people to cancer, and I've spent, days and days in hospice with people and, loved ones. And until that last moment comes, we're never, ever
Yeah.
prepared. And the grief that comes from that is, and some people say, oh, at least you got to say goodbye to them in an accident. You didn't, but I'm here to tell you that what you feel in your heart and what you feel in your body, and because a heart really can break from grief, a heart really can break, and what you feel is no different. The loss is you're going to go through the same feelings, you're going to go through the same. And even if you said, the last thing you had to say to somebody later on, and I teach this as well, is that you're, ooh, I wish I'd said, I wish I did, I wish I'd said, I wish I shoulda, woulda, coulda, the guilt over something. Like, it's all part of grief is a monster. Grief is a monster. It really, really is. But when it's learning some of the tools, and a big part about grief and some of the thing is knowing that you are not alone in it. Because we always think when we've lost someone that we're the only one that's feeling this way, that we've ever, because
Yeah.
we are the only one who has felt our hurt. Nobody else has felt the same hurt. So it's very lonely. Grief is very lonely. It's a very lonely road. So just having, what grievers want is, we want our grief to be witnessed. We want it to be validated. And because that's very important, that sometimes what people around us do is they try and not talk about the person or anything, thinking it'll hurt us, where actually it does the reverse. We want to talk about them. We want you to know that they were here. We want to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so there's but no, for me, I've experienced it all. And for me personally, the grief has not been any different.
Yeah, and I can attest to that too. It may
Yeah,
be with a sudden accident, there's shock, maybe more
yeah,
shock, but um the grief, yeah. And
yeah.
so on as we get through these processes of grief and start to feel more love and warmth, it helps me to actually talk to the people that are
Yes.
gone, even my
Yeah,
pets. I talk to them every day.
absolutely. Me
Uh,
too. They're still here.
hmm So, if anybody was bugging my house, they just say she has completely gone loony. Absolutely, totally, completely. I totally have. What's really interesting to me is how when a parent dies, especially the mother, the
Yes.
siblings, in most cases, so it doesn't sound like yours, but in my case, in a lot of cases, the siblings just kind of fall apart and they don't communicate. Have you found that experience to
Yeah.
be?
That happens a lot. I mean, in most homes, I'm, not generalizing, but in the nuclear home, then mom is really the one that keeps everything together. She's the one that is kind of the, we call home for something and dad answers the phone, we want to talk to mom. And so, not that dad is not important in the family, but mom is kind of the one that keeps everything together. And you know, when you're grow up and you move away, people go back home to see mom and dad, and people get there. But then when mom is not there anymore, people don't do that as much, or when dad is not there. And there's a whole thing around that. I have you know, something coming up that I'm working on, a whole session about daughters without mothers,
Oh, yeah.
because there is a real thing there about, like I said, not even wanting to talk about it for a while, but when a daughter loses her mother, there's something very, very significant about that and how it affects our lives moving forward, regardless of how old your mom was. She was still your mom, and you're still that little girl that needs your mom or dad. Doesn't matter how old, right?
No.
And and so that I just did a one on mothers without daughters, and now there's a one daughters without mothers coming up. But
Yeah.
there is a whole psyche around losing your mom and how it affects the family structure. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's definitely been, and I was really, it was sad when my brother passed suddenly due to an accident, but I was glad that mom had gone before him because
Mm,
they were really, really close. And I think she wouldn't have lasted if she, after he had that accident, she would have gone really quick because
yeah,
he was her firstborn. And yeah,
yeah,
it was a
yeah.
shock when he passed, but not try, it seems like there was another question I had. Okay. It'll come back. It's like it flew the cuckoo's nest.
Phew.
Come back, come back, come back. So, but grief is a monster. Oh,
It
okay.
is.
That's what it was. Thank you, thought. You came back. It's about people that are caregivers. Now, my sister did a lot of caregiving for my mom, even in the nursing home. She was the one that went all the time and bought stuff and did all the things. She was a baby. She's a baby of the family. But I'd like to have just a few minutes before we wrap it up, talk about people who have been caregivers. And even though grief is grief, what kind of experiences and encouragement can you give people who lose that person they have been taking care of for months, years, whatever? Because I know that has to be just really difficult to recover from.
It is very difficult, but it's not any different.
Okay.
It really is not any different in that we are still going to experience it the most. And trust me, I know people that have been caregivers for years for an elderly parent, and they go through the same, the guilt of, there's guilt from some people about they weren't around mom enough. Then there's guilt from others that they were around a lot, but they never saw certain things, or they wish they had done this, or they wish they'd done that. And sometimes being around someone so much is harder to deal with,
Mm.
or you know, it can be easier for some, it can be harder, but grief is grief. You're going to go through the same things, but you may have, you know, it's possible to have more guilt. It's possible to have less guilt. I mean, there's so much in grief that it really, like I said, it really is a monster. And until I've dealt with people from both sides of the coin, and really it's not a whole lot different. It's not a whole lot now you've got situations in families where everything was put on the one person because the family didn't want to deal with it. That's a whole different issue. Then there's you know,
Oh,
there's anger, there's a whole different, that's a whole kettle of fish, right? But no, really, the grief is the same. It doesn't matter what you are coming from, but you may have different emotions involved. Any, you know, emotions are also the monster, the anger, the all of, right?
yes. Oh, the anger. Oh my. Because
Yeah,
here's another, we're going to wrap this up because I know you've got a timeline. We want to honor that. But I experienced, and you read my piece on that, on cumulative grief, because
yes,
I'd never heard of it. But
yeah,
this last situation, it took me down, and I'm like, God, I didn't feel like this when mom passed or when Jamie, I didn't feel like this
yeah,
was just like hard. And then a friend of mine who's done a lot of counseling and like yourself, he said that's called cumulative grief. It
yeah,
all just
yeah,
snowballed, and I went,
yeah,
"Oh, that's so much fun." But
yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I wanted our audience. Can you spend a couple minutes on that and then anything else you want to share before we wrap it up?
Oh my goodness. I mean, for me, I think really accumulative grief is what I've been through because I've never had a chance sometimes to deal with one before the other one came along. And when I say that to deal with one, it's not as if we're not always dealing with it.
Mhm.
So, but when there's one added on and added on and added on, and you get to the point, I know people that and this is crazy to even say this, but for some people, you almost get numb to it.
Oh,
You almost get right, you get numb to after a while it's like but that's only a coping mechanism, right? When
yeah.
you just trying to, distance yourself from everything. But absolutely a cumulative grief. I mean, I think now there's some things that like when my mom died, I had a younger brother and sister, right? I
Mhm.
don't think my brother has ever dealt with it. He's lost his wife, he's lost so much over, it's just been just a yeah, like so much loss and he's never and it's just added up added up added up and he's just gotten angrier and angrier and angrier and so he's actually never really dealt with it. So yes, there is absolutely such a thing as a cumulative grief. And if you don't deal, and deal is a lousy word because we're always, grief is an ongoing, it's part of life. But if you don't deal with it at the stage, like in my brother's case as an example, then everything that happens to him now is, more trauma, more trauma, more trauma on top of each other. And yeah, it's a tough that's a tough role to and for him, I see it in him. I see the anger. I see the that he's, and it's affected every relationship in his life.
Yep.
It's affected everything in his life because he just hasn't allowed himself to feel.
Yep. And I think I'm not no putting down men, but I think they're harder to think it's harder for them to let that out. My brother's like that, the one that's left. And then he
Yeah.
then after my loss with my cat last year, I thought he did have cancer. Um, but then he thought he was dying, and as it turned out, it was a misdiagnosis. And oh my goodness! But
Wow.
the reality of thinking that he was dying was just on top of the others. And I'm like, God, people quit dying, quit dying.
Yeah.
I mean, this is enough already. So. Um,
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
you just want to go stop this train. I don't want to be on it anymore.
Don't want to be honest. If I pick, people say you write your life before you come down here, and I often say, "What the heck was I thinking?"
I know
But
I have done the same thing. I'm like, where was I? What when the I mean,
Mother
seriously.
Teresa, I love it. Mother Teresa said that God, I know you only give me what you know I can handle, but there's days when I wish you didn't have so much faith in me.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like nope, nope, nope. So the name of this podcast is really, came from my life and it fits every guest at some point. It fits every single guest. And And so as I do with all my guests, Marie, I want I give you a minute to share any parting comments, wisdom, words, whatever you want to say. And all of Marie's information will be at the end of the show. You can contact her for resources to get her book, to set an appointment, all of that stuff, because I tell you what, she is a gift to this world. So what would you like to share in parting comments?
Oh, you know what? If I had one thing to share with anybody, I would just say honor your grief and give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. What you're going through is perfectly normal. It's perfectly normal. And you're not nobody is going to fix you because you don't need to be fixed. You're not broken. You're grieving. Your loss is if something didn't matter to you, you wouldn't be grieving. I always say the grief is in proportion to the amount of love there was. And so when we love, I mean, part of the Garth Brooks says, I could have missed a pain, but I would have had to miss the dance. And I always say that, you know what, with my loved ones, I wouldn't have wanted to have missed a minute of the dance with them.
Yeah.
right? So, but give yourself grace and be kind to yourself and just know that what you're feeling is perfectly normal. Perfectly normal.
Oh, yes. And let yourself feel it.
And let yourself feel it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marie. We want to give you time to get where you need to go, and we will likely have her back on another show. But thank you
I
to
would love that.
all right. To all my
Okay.
Courage, Confidence, and Connections podcast, thank you for joining us and be in touch with us. If I can be any of assistance, I'm here for you too.
Thank you.